best advice?
Always ask the question. I think, too often we feel like it's not our place to ask the question. We feel like if I ask the question, people are going to think I'm a goose or I don't understand. That is almost never the case in my experience. In fact, complete the opposite is almost always the place. You become appreciated as the person who has the courage to ask the question everyone else wanted to ask but didn't.
Welcome to the Rogue L&D Hot Shots podcast, a short podcast allowing you to meet some of the brilliant folk driving people performance and development forward in an informal and human way. My name's Tom Bailey, award-winning L&D leader and passionate maverick for all things development. Join me as I ask just 10 questions of some of the industry's most innovative and interesting people. Tell us about yourself.
Tim Roberts Ferguson. I'm an L&D professional of way too many years, spending most of my career in corporates across finance, banking, manufacturing, FMCG sectors. And for the last 5 months, I have been out on my own, running my own small practice called Trionix Solutions, where I primarily offer sales leadership capability solutions, but also a wider range of L&D coaching and capability to my customers and clients.
What are you passionate about?
For me, it's that opportunity to work one-on-one. I mean, I love working with groups, but the opportunity to work one-on-one. And what I'm really looking to try and support people with is helping them to learn how to learn. How can we actually help people get better at noticing where they've got their strengths and where they've got their gaps, and how do they get feedback about that? And once they've identified it, how do they go about finding ways to leverage those strengths and to kind of where they need to, fill in some of those blind spots and gaps. And I feel like you're, giving people a set of skills that they will then be able to, kind of drive themselves going forward. They'll become, so much more autonomous and independent as a learner, which I think is the ultimate gift you can kind of give anyone.
What's the best L&D you've seen?
This one that I worked on, I still consider myself super fortunate to have worked on when I was working in the finance and banking industry, a very large Australian financial organisation, and we introduced a new selling methodology called insight selling, which was had only very recently been, I guess, kind of named as a methodology by the corporate executive board. We were, by our reckoning, the second large organisation in Australia to attempt to bring that in as a update to the existing sales program or curriculum or process. And it was a multi-year commitment. It had senior leader endorsement. We had a great partner that we were both, kind of learning with through the process. There was a lot of little experiments. There was a lot of test and learn. We had fantastic goodwill from the sales team who were willing to kind of come with us. Maybe not every single member of the sales team, but enough of them to kind of get, momentum. We were able to kind of leverage some new product innovation to kind of align with the program. It was one of those little bit kind of stars aligning in terms of opportunity, but not to kind of take away from, that senior leader endorsement, a team that was willing to learn, and, a partnership between the organisation I was working for and a third party that just kind of created magic. And it was just an exciting program. Every day you were kind of looking forward to what might happen next. There were, just lots of energy that was kind of unleashed through that program. Well beyond just, the kind of the selling methodology itself, just kind of curiosity, and ability to kind of navigate uncertainty, willingness to try something different. It really felt like it was a kind of organizational unlock as well as a learning event, if you like. And none of that was necessarily intended, but it was a beautiful consequence that sort of emerged from that program. So I think that's, for me, one that always sort of sits with me because of this kind of halo effect it had across the wider team. And yeah, super proud to have been able to play, my own sort of relatively small part in being a part of all of that.
Favourite hand gesture?
I do notice I kind of find myself pulling, and you can see my fingers, pulling backwards and forwards between being deliberate about my gestures, like I might be there, as opposed to just getting excited when I'm talking and my hands kind of do their own thing. So that one there is probably my favourite one. It's that kind of, I think it kind of means, coming, it's going, like there's energy, there's movement, there's things kind of happening, So it's my kind of inner excitement being demonstrated externally with my hands.
One thing you didn't learn.
Well, the first one that kind of came to mind for me was, 5 months in now, starting my own business, there's been a whole bunch of things that I've had to do that I haven't really had to do in this way before. And so I've actually really leveraged, don't know if I should be admitting this out loud, I've been leveraging ChatGPT to kind of help me learn without learning. So ChatGPT writes all the first drafts of my proposals, it writes all the first drafts of my curriculum and my programs and my interventions. And so it's kind of accelerated my ability to be able to do those things well, because it gives me this amazing first draft that I can then, kind of edit, update, complement, develop from. So I think for me, it's been a wonderful example of kind of not having to kind of learn from a blank sheet of paper, but learn from, if you like, a bit of a head start. So thank you, ChatGPT. It's been a bit of an office administration assistant kind of legend for me these last couple of months.
Proudest moment?
Proudest moment would be my most recent employer, so a large dairy manufacturer, and we ran a program on enterprise leadership. So really trying to think about how do we lift this ability for senior leaders to be able to look across the organisation. Particularly in an organisation where people were very strong at looking down and had wonderful and were rightly promoted and put in role for their deep channel or deep, kind of business unit expertise. But, the complexity of the modern world, how do we actually start to get better at understanding the dynamics and the interconnectedness and the need for this kind of, thinking across. And so, again, with a really wonderful partner, developed a program that involved the senior leadership team, the most senior the Australian leadership team, with that next level of leaders in mixed cohorts of people, where they were coming together for kind of forums that we'd scheduled over the course of 18 months, and then in between coming together in small learning groups to really kind of work together and make sense of what we were sharing, but also taking some of that and applying that into some project work that we actually gave them to do, kind of all in service of activating the new strategy that we ultimately had. So I think kind of really proud that we took a bit of risk in terms of the design and the structure. It was something that none of us had necessarily done before, but we felt conviction that it was going to have impact. But perhaps the piece that I didn't see there would be as much impact from is those mixed learning groups that we created, and just the way that unlocked understanding across the organisation, created new relationships, created new opportunities, which, it wasn't necessarily a core part of the design, but in some ways ended up maybe becoming the biggest impact that the program actually had. So for me, I kind of love it when something I design or something I'm a part of designing, it might do okay, but because of the way it was designed, it creates something that you never could have necessarily foreseen or imagined, and that becomes the thing that it gets known for. That's amazing.
Worst experience in L&D?
So this is going back quite early in my career, and it was a role that gave me wonderful opportunity to experience different organisations and different workplaces. It was a specialist superannuation provider, and we differentiated ourselves by providing education to the member base about their super and their insurance and retirement, all those sorts of things. And one of the kind of the workshops that I delivered was this kind of introduction that kind of helped people navigate their new choices. And this one day, and again, actually at a large Australian food manufacturer, the only way we could really make the travel work was I had to do seven 1-hour sessions back to back. So I don't know, I'm sure you've got some people listening, Tom, that 7 back-to-back 1-hour sessions is a lot, to large and mixed audiences. I had everyone from the senior leadership team to people from the factory floor in those different sessions. And I remember it was either kind of session 6 or session 7. I was about halfway through, and I just completely lost my memory of what I'd said and where I was. Like, because I'd had so many sessions all back to back, I was like, have I said that bit? Have I not said that bit? What story am I up to? And I just had this moment where I was completely lost because I had no idea what I'd said and what I hadn't said and what I was up to and what I wasn't up to. And I actually had to kind of just pause and say, sorry, everyone, this is my 6th or 7th session in a row. I've lost myself. Where are we up to? And I had to unfortunately, the group was very accommodating and kind of got me back on track.
Best celebrity moment?
growing up kind of, mid to late teens, the band that both I and most of my kind of cohort that I was hanging out with at that time were most enamored with, or most, kind of in love with, were U2. And it was the Rattle and Hum tour, I want to say. Or hang on, it could have been the tour prior to that, could have been the Joshua Tree tour. So it was one of those two tours. And we did get a little bit kind of, obsessed, I suppose. I think we went and saw them twice, which was quite expensive at the time and it's quite a big commitment. But we also got into this whole thing of like, we knew where the hotel was, so we went to the hotel to kind of hopefully see them, And then one time, we didn't see them at the hotel, but we did see them when they were playing at the Tennis Centre in Melbourne. And this was more by chance, but I think we must have been leaving, I think, after the second concert. And we were kind of walking up over what was the big sort of grassy knoll there. And we could see cars coming out from underneath the stadium. And it was them. We saw Adam and we saw the drummer, Larry Mullen Jr. So there you go. We kind of actually, and maybe that was kind of a good story because like we had gone pretty hard to try and see them. But I'm left with kind of the feeling, which I think I had at the time, was, oh, gee, that was a lot of trouble for like watching someone go past in a car for 2.5 seconds. But anyway, the things you do.
Something you believed, but nobody else did.
Cool. So one of the things I love doing is running helping to plan and then facilitate sales forums, sales conferences, sales events. And, it does take time sometimes to build a little bit of trust, because I know that the last thing you want to do with a sales conference is fill it up minute by minute with content, with some supposed, famous speaker who walked up Mount Everest, and basically no time for any other kind of, reflection or activity. So what I kind of know, from my L&D background, is that you want to create moments where people will get insight, where they'll be able to reflect, where they'll be able to connect and talk and actually create an experience rather than just, sort of a passive, kind of event. And so I find when I start a new organization, I'm working with a new sales director, I push, and usually the first year we just go their way and we just follow the agenda, and it's boring and it gets good feedback because everyone has too much to drink, but ultimately no one learns anything, certainly no one remembers anything. But usually by the second and certainly by the third year, I've earned the trust, and that's when I can actually start to create what I would call a curated sales learning event. And I do admit being a little bit proud when the sales director will come up to me at the end of those types of events and go, okay, I'll admit that was better than the one we used to run. So I get there slowly, but I do know, often that's going to be a way better experience for people than the default.
Best advice?
I think my best advice, and this could be for us in L&D, it could be for a first-time leader, it could be kind of really for anyone in organizations. My simple piece of advice is always ask the question. Always ask the question. I think, too often we feel like it's not our place to ask the question. We feel like if I ask the question, people are going to think I'm, a goose, or I don't understand. People worry that if I ask the question, I'm going to get, discovered as the person who doesn't know. And I've got to say that is almost never the case in my experience. In fact, complete the opposite is almost always the place. You become appreciated as the person who has the courage to ask the question everyone else wanted to ask but didn't. And you, by asking the question, you reveal further information, and we get more, and we learn more, and we understand more. So my simple advice to anyone really is always ask a question.
Thank you to our guest and to you for listening. If you want to boost the impact of your organisation's people development practices, I'd love to connect. You can find me at thomasbailey.co. Alternatively, you can look me up on LinkedIn.